decent amount to go through here, so make sure you're filled up on your caffeine, and we'll get started. So take it away, Chris.
All right, thanks, Daniel. I appreciate it. So now we're at the point where we're talking about deployment scenarios for Umbrella. Ken has given us a great foundation as to what the features and functionalities are of Umbrella. So now we want to move into how do we get this into customers' environments, or even potentially utilizing this in your own personal environment as well, as there is a lot of home use as we're now in this pandemic. So there's a lot of different things that's going on. So we want to be able to protect the environment there. So this is one of the easiest and simplest solutions at Cisco to implement. It really takes a matter of 5 to 10 minutes to get this up and running, to give you that DNS protection. If you want to get a little bit more granular with visibility into actual end users, it involves a little bit more work. However, it isn't a ton more. So again, sign up for it, be able to point your DNS to that, and be able to create policies as to what you want to allow and disallow within the actual Umbrella GUI. And then these are things that you will see once you work on a lab at a later date and time. One of the things that I would like to stress, that since we are talking to you partners, one of the things that you could leverage with the deployments for Umbrellas for trials for customers and different things like that is going to be the Umbrella Partner Console. So you can quickly and efficiently spin up a POV for customers and be able to help safeguard them from any of the malicious things, malicious traffic that's trying to leave out of the network and different things like that. So definitely are on the right track for that. So as we look at this, as we think about the deployment, again, this is one of the quickest and simplest solutions that we have here at Cisco to deploy. It would be one thing for us to tell you to go sell this if we weren't actually utilizing it ourselves in the network. And so this is just kind of walking through some of the different stats that we have for the deployment that we did here at Cisco. We can see that we had over 22 million DNS blocks per day. We can see that we have almost 8 billion DNS queries per day. And then this is inside, this really just built out. Again, average time for a request to take place is 30 minutes. We have over 110,000 Umbrella clients deployed via AnyConnect VPN. So we know that all users don't always VPN back into headquarters, so they're not taking advantage of the security stack that we may have at headquarters. So being able to have a roaming client, being able to have the AnyConnect client, we know that there's a lot of AnyConnect clients or AnyConnect customers out there. So being able to leverage the investment that they already have and being able to help leverage that as a way to safeguard their environment is something that's, truly important. So again, this is just a quick snapshot of just the amount of numbers and the amount of data that we're able to see and block as well. So as we're talking to customers, as we have that sit down, as we become that trusted advisor for our customers, we oftentimes want to sit down and actually map out what do their offices look like? How many offices do they have? How many employees do they have at various locations? And we know that sometimes when we're talking to our customers, not all locations are going to have a lot of people. Maybe it's 10 people, maybe it's 20 people, something on the smaller end. So the infrastructure that they have at these locations aren't going to be as feature rich, or you're not going to have a lot of devices there. So you have to be able to implement different security measures in different ways. And one of those things that we're able to do is if we're utilizing a DHCP server. So being able to go in and we know that all the devices are going to pull an IP address from the DHCP server. So that's also going to be able to disseminate out where they should be pointing their DNS requests to. So all the connected devices will be able to point that DNS request to Umbrella, and that's something that we're seeing here in this particular diagram. So whether you're using that DHCP server on a router, a switch, Wi-Fi AP, some type of modem or Windows server, you have that ability to set that DNS there, so you're able to get that protection for your DNS policy. The one thing to kind of keep in mind from there is that as we are working as we are utilizing this on-premise with the DHCP server, do know that all the traffic that we see coming to the Umbrella Cloud is going to have that external egress IP. So you won't be able to do that necessarily granular policies on internal networks or users for that granularity ability. However, you are providing protection from DNS requests and making sure that endpoints within the environment isn't reaching out to malicious sites. And if it is, then we're automatically blocking that from that standpoint. Or if you're downloading files and stuff like that, being able to block those malicious files with either AMP, and this is something we haven't seen before, sending up to threat grant for initial analysis on that and being able to protect that. So again, it gives you that layer of protection, but it doesn't necessarily give you that granularity that a lot of customers are asking for. It's something that you may want to use internally. So in speaking with that, again, there's so many different ways, there's so many different models that we have when it comes to customers and different devices that we are using, so you don't always have to use, as much as we want customers to be Cisco end-to-end architecture, that's not always the case, right? So there's a lot of different decision makers that are in place. And so we are able to utilize third-party network devices. If you are going to use that, we do have supported devices that you can leverage. But when they were enabled to provision that, you have to utilize a token that you'll get from the Umbrella dashboard. And then once you install that token, we'll be able to do the necessary configurations on that endpoint to be able to pass traffic to Umbrella for that layer of security to be able to safeguard the network there. So again, we are able to integrate in a lot of different scenarios from that standpoint. As we're looking at this, as we're getting on-prem location, if you have an on-prem DNS server, it's relatively straightforward to be able to point your DNS. Most oftentimes people are currently utilizing Google DNS for protection, or ISP or something like that for DNS protection. But simply just need to go in and change your DNS forwarders to the IP addresses of Umbrella, so 208.67.222.222.222 or 208.67.220.220 for that capability to be able to now send your external traffic from to point to Umbrella to be able to apply any policies and things that you have in place from that standpoint. So not a whole lot to it, just being able to go in and do that. You'll probably need to flush out the current DNS cache that you have for that so that it's able to take effect for that. So this is an illustration of being able to protect on-network devices utilizing the DNS server. Anything that's internal, traffic will flow internally. Anything that's external, it'll know to point that to the IP addresses for Umbrella. And again, your policies will be applied to that. So that's a good way to do it. And then they're not going to impact any of your internal DNS domains and resolutions from that standpoint, being on the network. And then again, this is just kind of similar process as we're utilizing the Cisco ISR. There's different processes that you would flow into that. Again, you're generating a token from the Umbrella dashboard, and you're going to install that on the ISR router. From there, we'll know that all the external DNS is going to be forwarded out of the ISR router to the Umbrella Cloud, and again, your policies will apply from there. So again, relatively straightforward. Protecting Wi-Fi utilizing the Cisco WLC. If you are leveraging that in the environment, that is something that could be leveraged to provision that similar to the ISR router or the third-party device. You're going to generate a token within the Umbrella Cloud and dashboard, and to be able to install that on the actual controller. So with that, you'll be able to secure your external DNS queries from that standpoint, and make sure that your guests' Wi-Fi or employees that are using the guest Wi-Fi is not connecting to any malicious sites, or maybe utilizing your policies to check for files to see if there's anything malicious in the files that are being downloaded and things like that. So you do have that capability there for that. So if we have appointed employee SSI Wi-Fi access ID to Umbrella Global Network, we're able to keep that guest Wi-Fi policy to that, so that you'll be able to be able to provide that granular control by SSS ID. If we're looking at on-prem protection, what we do, if you wanted to be able to get that granular rules and policies within Umbrella itself, what we have is a virtual Umbrella appliances, and what this does is you install that on either VMware or Hyper-V, and what that does is traffic, DNS traffic that comes from endpoints within the system or within the network is going to be sent to the VA. Based off of the VA will know what you would configure your internal domains so that the VA knows that, hey, your internal DNS server or is going to take care of that resolution. No need to extend it to process that externally. And then everything that's not internal is going to get processed out into the network. So what that's doing is that's being able to pull in your local IP name, the local IPs. You're also able to pull in your Active Directory information or users and groups and things like that. So now you're getting that granularity with your rules, or if you need to understand, well, what URLs have Ken gone to, or what URLs has Daniel gone to, and in the last week or so, you have that capability of being able to go in now and actually see that information. So that goes back to the slides that Ken was showing earlier, as far as like the URL reporting and different capabilities like that, or seeing if there's any connections to command and control. Oh, Chris was reaching out to an IP address is actually a command and control. That's actually something that we block. So you have that now have that visibility, as opposed to just solely looking at IP addresses and left guessing, who actually reached out to this malicious IP from there. In addition to the VA, we see a list of other instances where the VA can be installed. So Azure, a lot of people are utilizing the cloud or moving to the cloud, so they're not keeping everything on site anymore. So you have your Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, Nutanix, and different things like that. So you do have flexibility from that standpoint. And this is, again, just showing you an illustration of what's going on with utilizing the Umbrella virtual appliance. Again, this is something that when you're utilizing the Umbrella virtual appliances, they have to be deployed in redundant mode. That way there isn't any issues with the resolution of DNS that needs to go out to the your external DNS from that standpoint. So again, IP address here in 10.1.1.3 makes a request. If it's going to 10.1.1, then it's going to stay internally. If it's something that's external, so it's going to Google or going to Cisco.com, then we're going to send that traffic out. We're also going to have the information as to who that user is, and we're able to apply the right policies by looking at the org ID. That's going to be a part of that external DNS request. So that way we know that we are applying the right policies based off of the right organizations from there. So this is looking at the virtual appliance and utilizing an AD connector for granular control and visibility here. This is something that I've kind of already alluded to previously, just utilizing the virtual appliance, knowing what's in there and being able to actively sync with your domain controllers to be able to make sure that the right information is being garnered in a request. So we're being able to pull the username. We're also being able to pull the host name as well. So we have the user as Bill and the host as the Bill's PC. And so when we're doing that, now we're able to create granular policies for that within the Umbrella GUI. And again, this is something that you all will do in the lab when you're getting more familiar, if you're not as familiar with the Umbrella and the capabilities there. So now we're having that ability to enforce different policies, whether it's for the host user or group membership within your Active Directory from that. So again, you have a lot of different options for deployment when it comes to customers' environments, your environments, home labs, whatever the case may be. You have that visibility there. So if you need to test out any of your sample cases, you can leverage that. This also can be installed in Azure. Again, we know that there's a huge movement towards leveraging the cloud for these. Again, this is just another example here, so you guys can kind of just see what's going on from this standpoint, and being able to again make sure that internal traffic stays locally and external traffic is flowing out towards Umbrella to have the policies. So this is now another option that we have here. Again, if it's something that you want to quickly utilize, if you want to protect roaming users, again, pre-coronavirus, you know, we're out meeting with partners, we're out meeting with customers, or vice versa, you all are meeting with customers and different things like that. We want to be able to make sure that we are safeguarding our environment. Again, AnyConnect is something that is widely deployed. Very, very prevalent with a lot of customers. So it's something that can be easily added. As we know, we have different modules that reside in the AnyConnect client itself. So the Umbrella is one additional roaming client. It's something that is also that can be leveraged, and that needs to be utilizing AnyConnect 4.3 major release 1. However, we'll recommend you running the latest and greatest AnyConnect client for taking advantage of utilizing the secure web gateway, if that's something that you are going to leverage, with your customers are going to leverage. So being able to quickly install the roaming module, again, that's something that you would pull down the information. You would download the JSON information and configuration information from within the Umbrella console, and then you will put that in an appropriate flyer or the appropriate folder, so we'll know where that traffic is supposed to go, being able to identify the organizations that it's associated with, and kind of going from there. And then again, that's if end users are customers have AnyConnect client. Do keep in mind, not all customers have that. So we do have a roaming client as well, Umbrella roaming client. That could be used as a lightweight standalone. This is something that you know, me being security focused, this is something that I install on my wife's computer. This is something that I install on my parents' computer, siblings, whoever the case may be, just to make sure that you know they're not being impacted. I never want to say, you know, ask me what a Bitcoin is and what is ransomware and what's happening with the important documents. So you have different flavors of that capability there, and this is just showing you a screenshot of what it looks like in the AnyConnect module, and also the standalone roaming client as well. So being able to protect Windows or Macs utilizing the roaming client, you know, it's going to detect if you're connected to the Wi-Fi, you're at Panera, or you're at Starbucks or something like that, leveraging that. Again, pre-corona, I know some places are open, but you want to make sure that you're safeguarded. So once it realizes you're on the internet, it's gonna check to see what's happening, and it's automatically going to be turned on. So now you're being able to leverage that policy there. You can, if you're utilizing AnyConnect, we have the trusted network detection. If you're on network, it will turn off. It'll utilize the devices that you have in your network to send that. But once you're off premise and you're logging it and connecting to the network, that's automatically going to turn on, and you're going to be able to apply your policies. And then a lot of this pertinent information is going to be embedded in the unique identifier, so that we know who the user is and what organization they're tied to, and you're being able to apply that. So again, we want to make sure that when people are taking corporate devices home, and granted it should be used for work, we oftentimes know that there's instances where people are utilizing it for their personal pleasure, whether it's watching YouTube or utilizing Netflix or something like that. We want to make sure that, again, they aren't connecting to anything that's malicious. So this is where we're looking at the AnyConnect endpoint client for DNS and utilizing that for DNS that we'll be discussing. And we're also able to leverage that for the secure web gateway that Ken talked to earlier. So you can utilize both Umbrella DNS and web gateway services can coexist. So there's no issues there from that standpoint. And I saw this question pop up in the WebEx Teams room as far as IP layer enforcement and different things like that. Granted, Ken mentioned that 90% of malware utilizes DNS. However, there is a good 10% or so that doesn't leverage that. It utilizes hard-coded IP addresses. We are able to do IP layer enforcement. That is something that you can utilize in the Umbrella roaming client. We are also able to do that if it's AnyConnect, but that's going to be on the Windows side of things from that standpoint. So again, we are keeping a list of known bad IP addresses. Talos is very powerful. So we're keeping those lists updated regularly. So if something is trying to connect directly to a malicious IP address, we're going to be able to block that based off of the information that we know that's being passed down to our application. So anything risky or anything along that line, we're getting those feeds from Umbrella and Talos. So again, another layer of protection, as we know that threat actors are very, very, very crafty. And this allows us to add an additional layer of protection. Again, as we look at this again, we want to have the user identities. Again, oftentimes we're asked, well, where they can go, what has Ken been doing since he's been home, what websites and things he's going to, what websites has Chris gone to, what about Daniel, and different things like that. Now we're able to pull that information in, again, through the AnyConnect client or a roaming client from that aspect, and being able to really pass that information on to Umbrella so that we're able to garner and have that information so that you can easily run a report for these things. And these are just, again, a build-out slide for that. So that's what I had as far as the deployment section of Umbrella, and leverage that in your environment or working with customers to deploy that. Again, highly encourage you guys to utilize the Umbrella Partner Console for rolling out different POVs for customers, having something to quickly stop malicious activity within the environment from the web side of things, and being able to hopefully turn that into a sale for you all. So with that, we'll stop here, and I'll allow Daniel to take over and discuss the roadmap information.
Thanks, Chris. If you can pass the ball over to me, or awesome.
You have the power.
Thank you. All right. So, got the roadmap slide up. Intro. All right, let's move on. So we're going to break this down into the various components that we've talked about. Ken and Chris both talked about really today, right? For DNS and SIG. So I'm not going to get any detailed dates, but I'm just kind of going to talk a little bit about the highlights of what we've got and things that we've got coming up on the horizon. So from a DNS standpoint, already today, we've got something that's pretty handy called Activity Search Exclude. So this is pretty cool. If you go into the Activity Search report, you go in and do an advanced search. You can actually go in there and search for like domains. You can search on specific users. You can search on a lot of things like that. But one of the things that it was kind of missing was being able to actually exclude things. If you've got a particular site that's really noisy, or a particular user, or whatever it may be that you want to filter out, there's actually an exclude checkbox, so that you can basically put a not, if you will, for the filter, and actually filter that out and have that information not show up. So that's kind of cool. Also, for the any of the partners that have or customers that have multi-org consoles, We have centralized reporting now available from the parent level to be able to do reporting across all of those tenants. And then we've also enabled DNSSEC for DNS requests. And we've also got a long-awaited Umbrella Android client. So for a long, long time, we've had the capability to do iOS devices, and I'll talk about that in a little bit for our security connector. But Android has long been left off the list, or even I'll say it's always been on the radar, but it's just kind of been backburned a little bit. But that time is over, and we do have an Umbrella Android client. And there's going to be additional functionalities coming to that over time. We also have a DNS over HTTPS capability, and that's available now as well. And then from a limited availability standpoint, we have a report called ThreatLens. ThreatLens is pretty cool. It basically gives you a look at top threats that are going on in the environment. You can see it breaks it down into different categories, like malware. You can see sinkhole, like DNS sinkholes, Trojans, droppers, adware, things like that. So it just, again, it gives more visibility into what's going in the environment and really highlights where there may be some gaps in the security that need to be addressed. And then as far as coming out a little farther down the road, just on the roadmap with in the future, is tamper-proof capability for the enterprise roaming client for Windows. Basically making sure that a user, even if admin rights, doesn't have the capability to disable or uninstall the roaming client as a way of getting around that capability. Next, moving on to Secure Web Gateway. I've got a couple of slides. We had so many things go GA, we needed a whole slide for it. Again, I'll just highlight a few of these, but one of the big ones was the Customer Assigned Certificate Authority. As you heard Ken speaking to earlier, as far as the SSL decrypt, it can be quite a pain if you've got to deal with distribution of a certificate over to a bunch of machines. And so by having this capability, what you can do now is actually take your own internal certificate or whatever certificate you have that maybe already is installed on all the clients, and just upload it to the Umbrella console, so that you don't have to worry about doing a huge deployment of certificates. So that's a big one. I saw this mentioned. I think it was in the chat or the Q&A, but there was a concern around decryption, because that it can break things, right? It's definitely not something to approach lightly. It takes a lot of thought and planning. So one of the things that we do have the capability of doing within the policy is doing a selective decryption. So we don't have to decrypt everything. So that definitely is a huge help from that aspect. And that is GA as well. Application blocking, doing granular controls, right? Being able to allow folks to go to Gmail but not be able to upload files, that type of thing. Or go to Facebook but not be able to post. That's available now as well within the Secure Web Gateway. And the last one I wanted to speak to as well would be the AnyConnect client now having that module, which Chris spoke to earlier, within AnyConnect to have the access for the Secure Web Gateway. Now, as far as things that are coming down the pipe, so here in limited availability, application-based selective decryption, so taking that a bit of a step further to more of a layer 7 type of approach, and then also being able to do non-standard ports, right? I think earlier on we talked about it. SWG is just port 80 and full port 3 today, but we do have some testing going on for things outside of that, which really gives us that capability for non-standard things that are running on non-standard ports, and that kind of plays a little bit into the application visibility and capability to block that as well. We also have something we didn't have before, but is more of a traditional proxy type of feature, being able to block destinations that are not categorized, especially if you're in a more restricted environment, where you're more of an allow-only type of scenario. That can definitely be a big help. Especially with new domains spinning up all the time and they may not get categorized. Everything else, just a couple of things I want to touch on was one is the warn page capability. And this is used a lot in higher education, right, where you've got research going on, and typically for the most people on the campus, we don't want them going to certain types of sites, but there are exceptions where a department or a group of users may need to be able to access certain types of content for research purposes. So basically, we're being able to put up a warn page for those users to say, hey, you understand that this is typically not allowed based on whatever the university guidelines, or it's corporate environment, corporate guidelines, right? Business conduct guidelines, whatever that may be. So we can basically put up a page that warns them of that so that they're aware, and then there's a continue button so they can continue on through that. The other one is browser isolation, and that's the capability to really more of a threat-centric way of thinking of things, and making sure that we're not infecting users with things like browser drive-bys. And basically it's a virtualized browser that runs and actually pulls down the true content of the web page, and then it gets redisplayed to the user after it's already been through all the security checks on the back end. Similar to what, if you're familiar with the Web Security Appliance, is what was called dynamic content analysis. So similar to that, except we're running that through a basically through a virtualized browser. Cloud delivered firewall. So with cloud delivered firewall, obviously we're making strides with that product, or that portion of the SIG as well. One of the things we've recently added is the hit counters on those rules within the cloud delivered firewall. That's definitely helpful, especially if you're trying to look and see, certain types of communication. If they're going out your data center, you can actually see if these get hit. And then of course you can look at more detailed logging as well. Of course, as Ken spoke to earlier, we have constant data center expansion going on with new data centers coming online. And then also we have increased tunnel capacity. So we started out, I think, around like 150 meg for the tunnels for cloud delivered firewall. We increased that up to 250 meg. And actually, if it's necessary, we can even do up to 500 meg, but you do have to actually make a request for that. But it'll be more generally available in the future. However, just something to keep in mind, right? Just because you're limited to a certain amount in a particular tunnel, keep in mind you can set up more than one tunnel. So if you do have a customer that requires more than 500 meg of capacity, you can spin up an additional tunnel to handle that increased capacity and just load balance in between. As far as limited availability right now, we do have the layer 7 application visibility and control. It's hard to kind of keep these things straight because we just talked about that under the secure web gateway, but we're also working on the same capability for the cloud delivered firewall as well. So that is available in SWG. It's not yet generally available in the cloud delivered firewall, but it is something we're working on to be able to do that same type of granular control. And the same goes for the layer 7 intrusion detection and intrusion prevention, right? And that's one of the big things we get on with our the biggest competitor, one of our biggest competitors is Zscaler, right? Is we don't have the IDS, IPS for layer 7. That is coming. Last thing I want to cover for roadmap is, because as you've heard earlier on in the presentation today, right? The CASB portion of CloudLock, we've seen some of those features come over into Umbrella, right? App discovery and those types of things, where we're looking at specific types of applications that may or may not be sanctioned for a particular organization, and the capability to allow those or block those. So this is kind of a split between looking at those functionalities across the two products. So I know Ken's going to talk to CloudLock in more detail in just a little bit, but just from a roadmap standpoint, currently what exists there, right? We have user behavior analytics from a WebEx standpoint, and also the app discovery piece that I just talked about, that we've now integrated that into Umbrella. Things that we're looking at adding though for the future is single sign-on, as well as new types of connectors within applications. From the umbrella side of things, so we're looking at where we already have, excuse me, the advanced application control with an umbrella we talked about with the app discovery, being able to go and look at those apps. You can actually rate them on which, they're risk-based, whether they're high risk, or just medium risk or low risk, etc. So you can actually do that within the umbrella dashboard today and have granular controls within that. But one of the things that we've got now currently in early field trials and limited availability is tenant restrictions. So the idea behind tenant restrictions is, for example, if an organization uses Office 365, so they want their employees to be able to access their employee Office 365 accounts, but they don't want employees accessing their personal Office 365 accounts that they may have. Similarly, for something like Gmail, right? If you've got an organization that has Gmail for the overall organization, but don't want people accessing their personal Gmail accounts from within the environment, we can actually restrict that with these controls. Cloud malware coming down the pipe as well as DLP, which is still pretty early on, but we've got a phased approach that we're going to be doing with that, starting at a fairly basic level of DLP. And then like file types and things like that, and then we'll move more into some of the more traditional DLP and actually getting to a point even farther down the line where we're able to do like ICAP type traffic. All right, so that covers roadmap. We'll move on into the umbrella integrations. So we've got a number of integrations in the environment. I think that some of those have already been touched on a little bit. I know when Chris was talking through some of the deployment scenarios, you saw a little bit of that there. So one of the first ones to highlight as it relates to at least the Cisco portfolio, right, is the Meraki integration. And we'll start out talking about the MR, right? So if you're not already familiar with the Meraki stack, right, that's the cloud managed devices, includes wireless devices, firewalls, switches, right? We can do WAN type capabilities, SD-WAN type capabilities, VPNs, all those types of things that we can do with Meraki, all from the cloud. So obviously very cool. It's very easy to install, easy to manage. I know Chris already used one of the easiest things you'll ever deploy here at Cisco. Meraki, for being something that's a physical piece of hardware, I'd say is a close second to Umbrella as far as one of the easiest things to deploy. So we've got that to start with, and then the technology on the other side of this, obviously being Umbrella, right, which I think we've already touched on all the highlights of that, so I won't beat that dead horse. But the point being is that with the MR integration, right, the MRs are the wireless radios, right? So what we can do is actually build this out. As long as we've got firmware version 26 or higher, and this is now GA, is that you can basically manage your policy, create a policy with an umbrella. You can go into the umbrella dashboard, actually using the API key from Umbrella. It'll pull those policies in from your Umbrella dashboard, and then you can just pick and choose what SSID you want to assign them to. Choose the policy, and automatically it will enforce it. So that way you're not making, once you do that, if you want to make policy changes, you don't make those policy changes on the Meraki side. You actually make those changes within the Umbrella dashboard, and they will take effect. As far as how that's actually done, we've got a few screenshots just to run through here, just how easy it is, right? So go into the Umbrella dashboard. On the left-hand side, you can go under some of the admin panel. You can get the API key. So you can pull that API key at a secret, and then go ahead and go into the Meraki dashboard, paste those into there, and pretty much that's it. Ready to go. And then it pulls in your policy names. You'll see the policy, so you just choose the drop down, you assign it to a particular SSID, and you're good to go. I use this in my home network, works great. So it's definitely very easy to do and very effective. Now the other one that's probably a little less talked about, but equally, if not equally as useful, I'd say, is the integration with the Meraki MX, which is Meraki's security appliance. So all of it, this is still in the public beta, but the thing to keep in mind with Meraki has very long beta cycles. So they start out in a more of a closed private beta, then they open it up to the public, which means all you have to do is go into your Meraki dashboard and open up a ticket and just request that your firmware be upgraded to 15.1 or above to be able to handle the umbrella integration, and they will go ahead and do that for you. If you're familiar with Meraki, right, all those software pushes and everything that just happen, they can be managed. They're managed all remotely. You don't actually have to do any of it. And if you need to, you get an email that says, hey, there's going to be an upgrade to your switch or to your MX next week, and you can't take an outage during that time frame, you can always just open up a ticket and it has to be deferred. But regardless, it's a great way to do it. The cool thing about it with the MX, right, the MR, you're doing it, you're segmenting policy based on SSID. When you're doing it on the MX, you can actually segment based on VLANs within your environment or within your Meraki stack, or even through group policy, which is pretty cool. Another piece, as far as the umbrella integration, is around SD-WAN. So again, I think we're familiar with the umbrella technology. The SD-WAN standpoint, we talked about this, and this goes back to the very beginning of our overview deck today when Ken was talking to you guys about the SASE model, right? SASE is not just the security, it's the secure access to the edge, right? But the part of that is the network portion of it, and that's where kind of the SD-WAN piece fits into that. So there's a lot of flexibility that comes with that can be very dynamic as far as SD-WAN goes, and being able to quickly go in and do a very similar integration to what I just showed you on the Meraki. You can do that within, actually within Vitella. I'll show you a little walkthrough as we do that. But it's extremely easy to deploy. Again, you go into your umbrella dashboard, set up the policy that you want to enforce on that SD-WAN connection, and you can choose one or you can choose many, but you can quickly, if you have many that you want to apply it to, it's very quick and easy to do that. And I apologize, screenshots are a little bit blurry here, but basically as easy as going into vManage, going and creating a new policy. Once you've done all the required little micro steps here, I guess we'll call it, making sure that you've covered those pieces, you can go in, grab that API key. Once you've got that, and add that to the dashboard, then you can go through here and make sure this builds out. You can go in and pull a policy over that you want to use, and then that policy gets enforced. Chromebook integration. The Chromebook integration has been around for a good while and is still available. There have been some recent changes to Chrome OS on those Chromebooks that we had to address basically with an Android-based agent, but that is now GA and available again, so we still have Chromebook protection that is available. We also have AMP for endpoints. So hopefully most of you are familiar with AMP for endpoints, but if not, right, that's our your agent-based protection. Installed. It runs on workstations, runs on Mike's workstation.